Hello. This is the first of three PowerPoints that I'm going to share with you, talking about the different formats that you can use for your final projects. And what you're going to find is there's a lot of overlap here. Particularly in this first one, a lot of the things that you would consider in terms of brochure making will be relevant to newsletters and um, manuals as well. So let's dig into this. Just like any other kind of communication project, it's always important to be thinking very clearly about your purpose and your audience. So having that narrowed down in your head is going to impact your the information that you collect and the design that you choose. So being very, very clear for, what are you trying to teach someone? Are you just trying to inform someone? Are you trying to persuade someone? Those are important things to think about. Also, is this a novice audience, or is this an experienced audience? Are they children? Are they adults? Those are all important questions to ask yourself before you jump into this. So in terms of brochure specifically, if you imagine a trifold brochure all folded up, the cover is the most important thing, right? Imagine that your brochure is one of thousands in a display case. How do you get a potential audience member to grab your brochure and look at it? It's all going to be in the cover design. So it's really important that it is attention getting, that it's heavily visual, and that there's very limited text. You'll be able to delve more textually in the remaining panels, but you have to gain their interest initially. So that's going to be really important to think about. Once they have picked up your brochure and opened it, that first panel, and you can kind of imagine someone reading left to right. Although, brochures are tricky because that's not always the way it happens. Sometimes people's eyes will go right to that center panel. But imagining that most folks tend to read left to right, that first panel would be the inside left-hand panel. And again, you want to kind of limit how much information you're giving because you're still trying to draw them in. So you're going to reiterate what the focus of your brochure is, and maybe start delving into some brief content, but you're still really trying to catch their eye. As you work through the following panels, you can really kind of go more deeply into the different topics that you want to cover. It's going to be really important in each panel that it kind of works individually as well as supports the overall brochure. So they really have two jobs to do. And you're going to be able to, this is the really fun part, is when you start using the design elements, boldface, headings, white space, in order to really attract and convince people to use your product or go to your space or whatever it is. There's a lot of things you can think about here that we'll talk about in the other PowerPoints as well. But you really want to think about how you're using visuals, make sure they're really relevant and they're clear and they add something. They're not just taking up space. Some folks find it useful to add testimonials from satisfied customers, for example. And then it's really important, I can't stress this enough, to keep your style consistent throughout. So what I mean by that is kind of your overarching design should be consistent from panel to panel. So, keep your color scheme the same, keep your font the same. It will be too busy and distracting if you make too many changes. And that's a rabbit hole that many of us find ourselves falling into because there's so many design options that are available. It can be really fun to play, but don't get so carried away that you create chaos. So, it's so funny the how much different fonts, for example, will communicate differently. So it seems silly to spend a lot of time thinking about a font, but play around a little bit and look at the different kind of messages that are suggested by different fonts and really think carefully about what you're using. Same with shape, size, and color. It's really important, first of all, that whatever you choose is easily readable. And think about reaching as broad an audience as possible, right? So make sure the size is big enough for even those of us with aged eyes to read. Think carefully. You probably wouldn't want to use a cursive font. That can be really hard to read, and there's an entire population that cannot read cursive. Color, same thing. It's like when we used to make posters back in grade school. We always thought that yellow would work for one of those balloon letters we would draw, and it never does. Right? Really think about the readability and the visualness of the colors that you're choosing. And then also think about the tone that your color suggests, because that's something that has an enormous impact kind of psychologically as well. Not only does the color and the contrast create the visibility and the attention you want, but it can also support the message that you're trying to send. Very often, many causes are color coded: pink for breast cancer, red for heart disease, purple for domestic violence and Alzheimer's. Green tends to be associated with nature and outdoors, although now it's also being associated with cannabis cultivation. So think about how your message is being supported with the colors that you're choosing. As I said, your visuals need to not just be throwaway things. They really need to be adding something. And this is where you can kind of delve into the reading in between the lines part, right? So what you want is for your audience to imagine themselves in this visual. So the more diverse you create the visuals, the more inclusive they will be. This is a great place to connect with folks' emotions. You can do that with visuals as well. But just make sure that they're nice, high quality pictures, that they're true and honest, and that they're not just in there to take up space. That's really important. And again, the consistency needs to not just be with the design, but also your message and thinking about your audience. That needs to really be consistently focused upon as you go through panel to panel. I hope that starts to help get your juices going and helps you think about different things. Please, even if you're planning to design a brochure, please watch the other 2 PowerPoints. They're very short, and they will offer useful information, not only just potentially for this project, but also down the line. You never know when you're going to find yourself at work all of a sudden in charge of a newsletter, for example. So I think that watching all 3 of these, regardless of what kind of design you end up with, is useful, and you'll get some good material. Thanks.